Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to this edition of Prophecy in the News, coming to you again from the God's Final Jubilee Studios, as you can see here in Kentucky. And we're going to share with you something about the signs of the end time. Signs of the end time. And I'm going to give you some things today that point to the fact that we are getting very close to the end. I believe with all my heart we are in the last days. In fact, I believe we're in the last of the last days. I believe we're at the end of the end. And of course, the Lord could come tonight. The trumpet could sound right now while I'm sitting here recording. We're going to be real current again today with the program. But I want to talk about the signs of the end of it all here. And I'm going to give you some things that I believe point to the fact that we are near the end. But before I do, have you noticed what's going on? My goodness, we're under quarantine, or at least as of Easter Sunday, we're still under the quarantine, and things are shut down. And have you ever seen anything like it in your life? You know what? Have you learned anything? Hey, prophecy folks, are you paying attention? Because there's some questions that I get all the time. Here's some questions that I get all the time that you ought to be able to see clearly now. And maybe you won't have to ask some of these questions anymore, because maybe now you'll understand what's going on. Let me give you some of these questions. I get these all the time. How will people of the world allow the one world government to take over? I get that question all the time. Now, I want you to think while I talk about these, while I bring up these statements and these comments here and these questions. I want you to think about what's going on in your neighborhood right now, in your city, in your town, in your state. Or some of you that watch, you don't live in America. I want you to be thinking what's going on in your country right now that you never thought would ever happen. How will people allow a one world government to take over? I think with what's going on with the coronavirus, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? All it takes is a little invisible virus to go around for people to give up all sense of liberty, all sense of judgment, and turn everything right over to big government and world leaders and World Health Organizations and representatives and senators and governors and mayors. It's all it took, a little invisible virus. Can you imagine if a nuclear bomb exploded somewhere? Can you imagine what would happen to America? We've gone $4 or $5 trillion more into debt since this happened. Can you imagine if another one back to back hit us? We'd be a bankrupt nation if we did what we're doing now. How will the cashless society come in? Have you not heard the rumors about the fact that the money in your pocket, the money that you use to transact business, as well as your credit cards, can have the virus and can transfer the virus? And there's been talk about we've got to do something about that. Well, what do you suppose the answer is? The cashless society, of course. Of course. How hard was that? It's not hard at all, is it? Pretty simple, isn't it? You better believe it. Did you ever imagine what you'd be seeing and hearing right now? Did you ever imagine that would take place in your lifetime? I'm not saying it's going to happen right away. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year. I'm saying it's widely being talked about it, and it's widely being accepted by most people. And I'll go ahead and say it, even on the Prophecy News Facebook page. I've posted some things on there, and there's been some interesting feedback, and there's been a lot of arguing, a lot of people going back and forth on what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and about the lockdown and about shutting down of churches. There's been a lot of contrary talk back and forth among believers. Now, what does that mean? That means most people just like the Bible says, they're sheep. And you can lead a sheep right to the slaughter, and he'll think you're getting ready to feed him, and but and that's the way most people are today, and it's very sad. The mark of the beast, Brother Guru, how will the mark of the beast be instituted? How will that happen? Well, we can see it as clear as day. Have you been paying attention? Have you been watching the news conferences? Have you been watching what's going on? Have you been listening? Have you been paying attention to the immunization programs that are happening? They want to immunize everybody. They want to. In fact, Dr. Fauci, I heard him say it. He wants to give everybody documentation when you get immunized, so that you'll have papers. I've got to see your papers. Remember that? We've all seen that in the old World War II movies, right? That'll never happen here. Don't count on it. Don't count. It could happen next week, and most of the American people would be for it, because we have a crisis going on. At least they tell us there's a crisis going on. The mark of the beast. There's a lot of talk about Bill Gates and something that they're working on, where he could immunize and possibly even put a chip in the bloodstream of every single person in the world. Boy, that would solve the mark of the beast problem, wouldn't it? I'm not saying that's the mark of the beast. I'm saying that's the beginning of the technology of it, and that's it'd be a piece of cake once everybody has that, to be able to keep track of everybody and determine who can buy and who can sell. You can just shut them off. You can just shut the chip off and you can't buy. Real simple. See, we're seeing things now because of this coronavirus. We're seeing things we never thought in our lifetime that we would see. Now, let me make this very clear, lest somebody misunderstand. The mark of the beast, you do not have to worry about that right now. The mark of the beast, when we talk about this kind of stuff about the mark of the beast, we're seeing the technology and the beginnings of it. But you do not have to worry about it. You and I, if you're saved, if you're born again, you will be taken off this world, and there's no chance of you even having to make a decision about the mark of the beast, because the buying and selling with the mark of the beast takes place at the middle of the tribulation. That's 3.5 years in. So don't worry about it, but pay attention and see. You can see it coming. It's here. Let's see, papers. These papers that they want to give everybody, signifying that you've been immunized. In other words, giving you freedom to walk about the cabin. You that have papers may now walk around the cabin. You may now walk around the country. You may now get on a flight or a bus or a subway or go to the grocery store, but you got to have your papers. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's already out there. And I guarantee you, just from what I've been paying attention to with Christians on the internet and on Facebook, and the arguments about whether we should assemble at church or not, whether we should be in the parking lot, I'll tell you, there's been some vicious going back and forth between Christians and between preachers. And you might have saw the program I did just a couple weeks ago about the church becoming non-essential. If you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube. Go and watch that thing. Listen, I'm talking about Christians now. Christians have determined, and preachers have determined, the church is not essential. We need to shut it down. Wait till we get past this. We're not essential, like the liquor store and the abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood, and all the grocery stores, and Lowe's and Home Depot, and 1,000 other places. They're essential, but in a lot of states, the churches are not. Don't you ever let yourself be put in that category, my friend. You better never think that you're not essential, because you are. All right. Immunization for all, mandatory. Can you see how easy that would be to push through right now with the fear? We're all going to die. I mean, that's the fear. That's been going through everybody's head for weeks and months now, is that we're all going to die. And we got to shut the country down. We got to go bankrupt, and whatever it takes, because we're all going to die. Can I say something? We're not all going to die. Not from this. We're all going to die, but not from the virus. This isn't anywhere near as deadly as the normal influenza that comes through every year. In 2018, 80,000 people died of the influenza. In fact, this year there's already over 50,000 people who have died of the normal flu, influenza. We're not even halfway there. And I doubt we will get. The numbers keep dropping. I personally believe this has been used by the media. I'm not saying the virus isn't real. I'm saying an epidemic has been conceived by the media in order to destroy the economy, in order to destroy a president, in order to take back power over the conservative crowd and bring in the one world government or socialism, whatever. I'm convinced of that. Now, if you're not, that's fine. So how do we get Americans to give up liberty? You can look right now. It's already happened. We've given up our liberties. We've given up our right to go to church, our right to assemble, our right to go to a store. We've given up our right to go golfing or go out to the beach. That's all it took. So those of you that are always asking me, how are they going to take over America? America's free. We got the Constitution. We won't give up our rights. We already did. We already did. Oh my goodness, we've got to beat this thing. This thing's awful. We've got to cower down and we've got to give up our rights for a few months and we've got to get through this. That's all it took. A little bitty invisible bug that you can't see has brought the nation to its knees and has caused us to allow governors and mayors to dictate to us what we can and cannot do, where you can and cannot go, whether you can be outside, whether you can cut your grass, whether you can go to the beach, whether you can go for a walk, and definitely church. Church, my good, that's a no-no. It's okay to go to the liquor store, but not church. Do you see what I'm saying? How easy this was? Wow. So, in my book, I've got my book, 7 Clocks of Ticking. Many of you have that book. If you don't, it's the most important book I've ever written. 7 Clocks of Ticking. You'll see up on your screen. Rex will put it up there for you, how you can get the book if you don't have it. I want to read something on the back cover, and this goes with my program today. It's called Time is Running Out. Of course, the book is called 7 Clocks of Ticking. On the back cover, it says, Time is running out. The condition of the world today is like the folks on the Titanic, eating, drinking, and being merry, unaware that time is running out and their doom is just hours away. Like those on the Titanic, humanity is unaware of the judgment soon to be released. Maybe there's already judgment being released from God. The hour is late. There are 7 clocks all ticking towards midnight, and everything is about to change. This is not just a book about prophecy. It's a book that reveals the warning signs pointing toward the end times. I call them ticking clocks. There are 7 of them. These 7 clocks are sounding an alarm of impending doom and are speeding towards a season of great tribulation upon the earth, a time of suffering and sorrow like the world has never seen. Today, right now, it is 5 minutes to midnight. Time is running out. Everything is about to change. And few are aware that a horrific storm is about to rock the planet. And let me go a little further. I'm not just talking about the world, I'm talking about Christians. Very few Christians understand that a storm is about to be unleashed and everything is about to change. Everything's already changed in America and around the world. Liberties have been put aside. We've given up freedoms, we've given up rights. Because basically they've asked us to surrender our rights and our constitutional rights until we get through this pandemic, as they call it. That's all it took. That's all it took for the American people to cower down and rush inside their house, lock the doors of their churches, run home, and sit it out, give up all their freedoms. For what? For the sake of security from our government. Was it Ben Franklin that made that famous statement? He who will give up freedom or liberty for security will soon have neither. And you know he's right. That statement is absolutely right. You cannot ever give up your liberties. Ever. Ever. Because if you're willing to, the government will find a way to bring the crises to get you to do it. And by the way, we're there. Okay? Now there are 7 clocks. I want to tell you what the 7 clocks are, and we'll talk about maybe one of these here for a few minutes. There's the 6,000-year clock. We're going to try to talk about that just for a couple minutes. There's the Jubilee clock. We're headed to the final Jubilee. There's the church ticking clock. There's the nuclear clock. That's the scariest chapter in the book. The ticking nuclear clock. It could happen any moment. Did you know the world has the ability to destroy itself today? Like it never had that before. Right now, the world could destroy itself. Daniel's clock is ticking. That's the kingdoms of the world clock. The harvest clock is ticking, and the clock of Israel is ticking. And I do want to talk about Israel for a minute here, and see how far we get. Israel is the greatest of all end-time prophetic signs. No doubt about that. The greatest sign of all the signs is the nation of Israel. It is the most visible of all the ticking clocks discussed in my book. Old-time preachers used to say, keep your eyes on Israel. You want to know where we are on the prophetic clock? Take a look at Israel and you'll get an idea for that. Let's establish 3 events concerning Israel that have to be in place for the end times. There are 3 things that have to be in place for the end times. Number 1, Israel must be in their land. Well, guess what? They're in their land, aren't they? Number 2, Israel, by the way, that happened in 1948. Israel, number 2, must be in need of a peace treaty, because as soon as the rapture happens, the Antichrist, and this is what begins the tribulation, the Antichrist confirms a covenant. Doesn't say he makes a deal, doesn't say he makes a peace treaty. It says he confirms a covenant. And that's for another day. I could go into that. I believe that covenant is the Abrahamic covenant. I believe what the Antichrist does is confirm to the world that Israel are the people of God. That is their land. They're given to them in the Abrahamic covenant. I believe that's what the confirming of the covenant is. I realize that's different than a lot of the prophecy ministry people are telling you out there. And that's fine. I'm telling you what I believe. I believe that nowhere in Daniel 9 does it say he confirms a peace treaty or signs a peace deal. It says he confirmed, this is the exact words, he confirms a covenant with many for 1 week. That's 7 years. Now, it's possible that he does offer them a peace agreement. We don't know. He confirms something, I think, that's already there. All right? They've got to be wanting that and ready for that, for the end to be here. They are. They're begging for peace. And they're just about desperate enough to do about anything to get it. Number 3, Israel must be ready to build the temple, because the temple is going to be here during the tribulation. So it's either going to be built before or during the tribulation. And because the Antichrist is going to go into that temple right at the middle. So those 3 things. And by the way, Israel is the fig tree. Talks about that. And I believe Israel is also the sign of Ezekiel, son of man. In chapter 37 of Ezekiel, son of man, can these bones live again? I believe that's talking about Israel, the restoration of Israel. And that's happened in 1948, right? No other nation in the history of the world has ever ceased to exist and then years later recovered their statehood. I got to hurry because I want to share something with you. All right? So that's Israel. And these things have all happened, all right? So I'm going to get out of that one. I'm going to lay that over here. Let me tell you something about Israel now that just happened in the couple minutes that we got left. It's been about a week now. By the time you watch this, it'll be a week to a week and a few days since Passover happened in Israel. There are 3 or 4 things about Passover this year that are very interesting. I want you to pay attention now. Number 1, Passover this year, by the way, it was on a Wednesday. Passover this year was on the same day of the week as Calvary was 2,000 years ago. Did you hear that? It was on a Wednesday. Now, I know everybody talks about Good Friday and everybody argues all this stuff. Listen to me. Passover was on Wednesday in Jesus' day. He went to the cross at 9 in the morning. At 12 noon on Wednesday, it grew pitch black. At 3 p.m., Jesus gave up the ghost and died. At 6 p.m., he was placed in Joseph's tomb. 6 p.m. on the Jewish calendar becomes the next day. So at 6 p.m. Wednesday, it's now Thursday, which is the beginning of Feast of Unleavened Bread, a high Sabbath. And that's why they had to get him off the cross. The high Sabbath was not Saturday, the high Sabbath of unleavened bread. They had to get him off the cross for that. He goes in the tomb that night at 6 p.m., which is now Thursday. So from Wednesday night to Saturday night is exactly 3 days and 3 nights. Wednesday at 6 p.m., Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Saturday at 6 p.m., it is now exactly 3 days and 3 nights. And what happens? Up from the grave he arose with a mighty triumph over his foes. He rises from the grave at 6 p.m. on what? Sunday. 6 p.m. Saturday is Sunday on the Jewish calendar, the Hebrew calendar. It's always been that way. It's still that way today. All right, that's important. Second thing, it was a supermoon. That's interesting. It was a supermoon, the same day of the week as Jesus died on the cross 2,000 years ago. Number 3, it was close. It is very close and possibly could be the 2,000th year of the church age. If it is, that's huge, friend. That's huge. And here's a big one. For the first time in 3,500 years, since the very first Passover in Exodus chapter 12, for the first time since then, the Jews are quarantined this Passover in their homes. They could not leave. For the first time since 3,500 years ago, when on that first Passover, you had to be inside your house under the blood. For the first time in 3,500 years, that's happened again this Passover. They had to be in their homes. They were quarantined. And lastly, it's a strange time of leadership in Israel with the two Benjamins. Benjamin Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu are kind of sharing power, and it's kind of strange. I don't have time to explain it. This is a strange time. So that's what's going on. Interesting times. Do you think we're near the end of this thing? Can you see it all unfolding before your eyes? The global system is here, the financial system, the how easy it is to get everybody to take an immunization and maybe be implanted with a chip, the whole world. Can you see how easy all this stuff is now? Friend, do you know Jesus as your Savior? If you're not saved, my friend, when that trumpet sounds, you're going to be left behind. I'd hate for that to happen to you. Make sure you know Jesus as your Savior. Contact us if you'd like some information. We could send you a gospel tract or maybe talk to you. We'd love to help you with that. Friend, these are interesting days. These are interesting days. The Lord is coming back, and He's coming back soon. Keep your eyes on them skies and keep looking up.